You know those moments in politics where something is supposed to be completely routine, and then suddenly the entire room shifts? That's exactly what happened inside the Senate Judiciary Committee. Nobody saw it coming. And honestly, what unfolded next is something that every American needs to hear about. Here's the setup. The committee had gathered to move through what was supposed to be a standard vote. Business as usual. Senators in their seats, staff passing notes, the usual controlled chaos of Capitol Hill. But right in the middle of it, Senator Cory Booker leaned forward and...
On the motion?
Go ahead, sir.
I don't want to jump over the ranking member of the
I'll defer.
Okay, so I'm reading that Cornin's second degree, and he said a lot of really important things about immigration that are worthy to be discussed. And I'm happy to vote on an immigration bill. I disagree with the death penalty. I will vote my conscience on this. But I want to draw everybody's attention to the first two lines of your second degree. They have nothing to do about immigration. They have nothing to do with the death penalty. I've never seen this before. His first two lines is not to bring up this important issue that should be discussed, debated. Your first two lines are to strike my amendment in its entirety. So what we have right here is hidden behind real issues on immigration is really just trying to not vote on the important points that we brought up about transparency and accountability on the Jeffrey Epstein files. This is not an amendment to my amendment. This is an attempt to strike what I have a whole list of prominent Republicans, elected leaders, who want the same thing I want, which is just to have transparency on this matter.
Can we vote
I've
on
heard
my
some of the
second degree?
comments, if I can finish, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I have heard public statements by my Senate colleagues on both sides of the aisle. I've heard comments from Republicans on the House side and Democrats on the House side that we want transparency and accountability on a matter of public safety. Senator Cornin said that Jeffrey Epstein's dead yet, but his victims are not. There are women who have horrific stories of vile violence that was committed against them. We have Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, who said that there is evidence, truckloads of it, as to these crimes, potential co-conspirators, potential others involved. How can we not want to just know what happened? Why are we trying to simply turn away from the highest law enforcement officers in the land, from our FBI director to our attorney general, who spoke towards crimes committed and others involved in those crimes? Why are we considering an amendment that is hiding behind real immigration issues, but real intent is to strike a simple request for transparency, for accountability, that Republican voices all across the spectrum have been demanding from this president and this attorney general? So if Senator Cornin is going to offer an amendment, I'm going to offer a third degree that simply strikes his first two lines. I'll vote on your immigration stuff that you so strongly stated that was the importance of this, but you hid the fact that you put here the real intention of your amendment. It has nothing to do with immigration. It says it right here in the first two lines. The real effort was just to not have accountability and transparency. What are you afraid of?
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Yeah, you may respond.
I trust the Senate-confirmed Attorney General of the United States to make the proper legal analysis to determine what of the Jeffrey Epstein files can be released. He was confirmed by the United States Senate as Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States. I trust her to make the right legal determination. But I would ask my colleague from New Jersey, you claim you care about the victims. Do you care about Tammy Nobles? Do you care about Marie Vega, the angel moms who lost their loved ones, their children, to the acts of an illegal alien who never should have been here in the first place? Do you care about them?
Can I respond to the senator's question? Sir, I've known you for 14 years. you and I both care about victims of crime. And to suggest otherwise is stunning to me.
Senator,
if I may finish,
Senator,
sir, I allowed you to finish.
I asked you
Sir,
a
and I'm
question.
trying to
I didn't
answer.
make an accusation.
Mr. Chairman,
I asked you
Mr.
a
Chairman,
question.
Mr. Chairman.
Answer the question.
I should have allowed a time to respond to the senator's question. I did not interrupt him, and now he's interrupting me.
Please
It is another violation of the decorum of this place.
Go ahead, Senator Booker.
Senator Cornin, both you and I have spent our lives. I know your record. I know your history. I know what you've done. I would never, ever question whether you care about the victims of a heinous crime. You ask me if I care? Absolutely.
Thank you.
No, I'm not finished yet.
Well, thank you for answering the question.
Well, I'm going to answer the question in full. You are not sincere.
Let me explain.
Sir, he has put an amendment in
Would you allow
trying
me,
to use the horrific nature
Would you allow me as sponsor of this bill to
Sir,
explain?
I will not pick a fight with Chuck Grassley in the same way that Chuck Grassley won't pick a fight with me.
The reason for his amendment is because your amendment says that this bill that we're working on will not go into effect until we get all these records. And this bill is an opioid bill to help solve some of the drug problems in this country. And we ought to get it passed because it's a bipartisan bill and it's very badly needed.
Sir, may I respond?
Yes.
So I said at the top of my comments, my frustrations, we've said it to your staff, we've said it to others, that when funds like this have been made available so far in the first 6 months, they're clawing back funds from my state. And that's unfair, and I would like to deal with those. We could deal with them. And given that, I am sticking to an amendment that is not controversial. Okay. I know it's not controversial, sir, because I've seen polling literally on Republican channels that the overwhelming majority of Republicans and Democrats want transparency and accountability. That the overwhelming majority of Americans has seen that one of these two things is lies. Is there truckloads full of evidence as to victims of crime not having justice? Have we been lied to? Who are we trying to protect? What are they trying to hide? This is not controversial. We have Republican leaders in Congress calling for the same thing that this amendment calls for. And so for a second degree to be offered to mine, where you're using horrific crimes to hide the real intention of this, if this amendment is so important, just strike the first two lines that strikes my entire amendment. The intention of this is clear. It's to not give the American people accountability, transparency, and truth. That's what we as the Judiciary Committee should be seeking. So I offer a third-degree amendment, preserving every noble thing that the senator from Texas said he wanted.
You can't offer third-degree amendment.
I can't offer a third degree. Then I ask that we strike the true intention of his amendment, the first two lines.
At this stage, you can't offer a third-degree amendment. If there's some way for you to do that, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, may I respond?
Yes.
Briefly?
Then we'll have a roll call vote, because I know you folks want to get votes on your amendment. I asked you to withdraw them, and you aren't withdrawing them. So
Well, I just want to ask a question, Mr. Chairman. In your opinion, would the addition of these amendments to the underlying bipartisan bill jeopardize our ability to pass this underlying bill, anti-opioid bill, out of committee and across the Senate floor and get it enacted into law? Would these amendments jeopardize that?
I see them jeopardized in ways even beyond what you said.
So,
Because if we pass the legislation with this stuff on, it wouldn't go into effect anyway. Who knows how far down the road? When the president signs the bill, I want it to be effective.
that's what I thought, and I appreciate your answering the question. I think the debate that Senator Booker and I have is not something that's going to be resolved today. And so it will continue. So I think regardless of how we act on the underlying bill, that debate will continue, and neither he nor I are giving anything up in terms of our ability to continue to debate this topic. But I'm willing to withdraw my amendment if Senator Booker's willing to withdraw his amendment in the interest of passing this bipartisan anti-opioid bill out of the committee and through the Senate and seeing it enacted into law, and hopefully saving some lives in the process.
Senator Booker.
Mr. Grassley, sir, I have asked for someone to address my New Jersey concerns for months now. There was an incident in which you got a special carve-out for your state when they froze funds, but I have got no justice for New Jersey. So if you want to postpone this and address my New Jersey concerns about the resources we are not getting, and I know you would do that with me in good faith, I would be happy in our next meeting, but right now I am sticking with my amendment.
It'd be faster to address your concerns for New Jersey if you'd asked me to help you with the administration to get something done so you can get your money.
Sir, I've got no, not from you.
Then if you do it through the legislative process, tell me that. Let me make a conversation with the White House on your issue.
But I'm going to stick with my amendment until I get satisfaction on that.
The clerk will call the roll.
And what are we voting on? I have no idea. On my amendment?
No, we're voting.
It's the second degree.
Call the roll on the Cornin amendment.
Mr. Grant.
Aye.
Mr. Cornin.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Cruz. Aye. Mr. Hawley.
What he said next stopped the room cold. He had been reading through an amendment put forward by Senator John Cornin of Texas. On paper, it looked like it was about immigration. Serious topic, sure. But Booker, and here's where it gets interesting. Booker noticed something buried inside, something that had absolutely nothing to do with immigration. 2 lines. Just 2 lines at the very top of that amendment. And those 2 lines, they were designed to completely erase Booker's own amendment, an amendment that was calling for full transparency on the Jeffrey Epstein files. Booker himself said it straight into the microphone. I've never seen this before. And when a senator who has spent years in that building says he's never seen something like this before, you pay attention. Think about what that actually means. Someone drafted an amendment, dressed it up in immigration language, walked it into that hearing room, and hidden inside like a trapdoor were 2 lines that would quietly kill any chance of a transparency vote on Epstein. No debate, no discussion. Just gone. Do you think that's a coincidence? Let me know in the comments. Because Booker wasn't buying it either. He made it clear this wasn't an amendment to his amendment. This was an attempt to strike it entirely. And the reason that matters? Because the Epstein case isn't some old closed chapter. The victims are still alive. They are still fighting. Attorney General Pam Bondi herself had reportedly stated there are truckloads of evidence connected to this case, potential co-conspirators, crimes that went far beyond what was ever made public. So Booker looked around that room and asked the question that nobody had a clean answer to. How can we not want to just know what happened? And then he went further. He pointed out that this wasn't a partisan issue. Republicans had been demanding transparency. Democrats had been demanding transparency. Elected leaders from both sides of the aisle had publicly said the American people deserve answers. So then, who exactly was this amendment protecting? That question didn't just hang in the air. It landed, and the room knew it. The debate was just getting started, and trust me, it was about to get a whole lot more intense. All right, so here's where the gloves came off. Senator Cornin had been sitting there, listening to Booker lay out his case. And when he finally got his turn to respond, he didn't come in swinging on the Epstein question directly. Instead, he did something much more calculated. He shifted the entire emotional weight of the room. Cornin said he trusted the Senate-confirmed Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, to make the proper legal determination about what Epstein files could or could not be released. In other words, his argument was simple. Let the Justice Department handle it. Congress doesn't need to force this. Now, on the surface, that sounds reasonable, right? Except, and this is the part that doesn't get enough attention, Booker's amendment wasn't asking the Justice Department to do anything. It was asking for transparency, for accountability, for the American public to actually see what exists. Those are two very different things. Here's where it gets interesting. Instead of defending the two lines that Booker had flagged, the ones that would erase the transparency amendment entirely, Cornin pivoted hard. He started talking about victims of crimes committed by undocumented immigrants. He mentioned names, real families, real losses. Tammy Nobles, Marie Vega, angel moms who had lost their children. And then he looked directly at Booker and asked, "Do you care about those victims?" Now, politically speaking, that's a powerful move, because suddenly the debate is no longer about hidden lines inside an amendment. Suddenly, it's about who cares more about victims. It's an emotional redirect. And in a hearing room with cameras rolling, it hits differently. But Booker didn't flinch. He looked right back and said, "Sir, I've known you for 14 years. He said he knew Cornin's record, knew his history, and would never question whether a fellow senator cared about victims of violent crime. But, and this is the part that matters, he also said that the question itself was stunning. Because using the pain of crime victims to dodge a transparency vote, that's a different conversation entirely. The interruption started almost immediately after that. Voices overlapping, senators talking over each other, the chairman trying to restore some kind of order. And right in the middle of all that noise, Booker said something that cut straight through it. Tragic stories are being used as political cover. Think about that for a second. He wasn't dismissing those victims. He was saying their pain was being weaponized, used as a shield to avoid answering a completely separate question. And that question, no matter how many times the conversation got redirected, kept coming back to the same thing. What is actually inside those Epstein files? And why does the mention of transparency make powerful people so uncomfortable? Do you think these senators are genuinely divided on principle, or is something else going on here? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because what happened next brought the whole thing to a breaking point, so now the room is already running hot. Senators are interrupting each other. The chairman is calling for order. And just when you think things might settle down, the conversation takes a turn that nobody in that room was fully prepared for. Because here's what most people missed in all the back and forth. This entire explosive debate, it wasn't even happening inside a hearing about Epstein. It wasn't an investigation. It wasn't a special committee convened to dig into one of the most disturbing criminal cases in modern American history. It was happening inside a vote on an anti-opioid bill. Let that sink in for a moment. A bipartisan bill, supported by both Republicans and Democrats, designed to help communities devastated by the drug crisis. Real people, real suffering, families torn apart by addiction. And somehow, in the middle of trying to pass that legislation, the Epstein transparency fight had erupted right in the middle of the committee room like a grenade nobody wanted to pick up. Chairman Chuck Grassley. And for context, Grassley has been in the Senate longer than most people have been paying attention to politics. Stepped in at this point. He made something very clear. If these amendments stayed attached to the opioid bill, the entire piece of legislation could be jeopardized. It might not pass. It might not even take effect. Here's where it gets interesting. Suddenly, the committee wasn't just arguing about Epstein anymore. They were staring down a genuine dilemma. On one side, a transparency demand that millions of Americans supported. On the other side, a bill that could genuinely save lives from the opioid epidemic. And the clock was ticking on both. Booker, to his credit, didn't pretend that wasn't a real tension, but he also wasn't moving. He told the committee that his amendment should not even be controversial. He said, polling, even on Republican-leaning channels, showed overwhelming public support for Epstein transparency. He argued that if there truly are truckloads of evidence sitting somewhere, as the Attorney General herself had suggested, then the American people have a right to know. And then he said something that reframed the entire debate with one sharp question. Have we been lied to? Because think about it. Either the evidence exists, and powerful people are choosing to keep it buried, or the claims about that evidence were exaggerated, which means the public has been misled in a completely different direction. Either way, someone isn't telling the full truth. Who is being protected? What are they trying to hide? Those weren't just rhetorical questions anymore. They were landing like accusations inside that hearing room. Senators shifting in their seats, staff members leaning in. The kind of silence that only happens when a room full of powerful people realizes the conversation has gone somewhere they can't easily walk back from. And that's exactly when Senator Cornin offered what looked like a way out. But was it really? Or was it just another move on the board? Do you think the opioid bill was being used as leverage? Or was it a genuine attempt at compromise? Let me know in the comments. Here's the moment where everything came down to a single choice. Senator Cornin, after all the fire and back and forth, leaned back and offered what sounded like an olive branch. He said, "Look, withdraw your amendment, I'll withdraw mine. Let's pass the opioid bill. Let's get it through the Senate, get it signed, get it into communities that are desperate for help." The Epstein debate isn't going anywhere, he said. It'll continue. Future hearings, future investigations, future votes. But right now, let's do something that actually helps people today. Sounds reasonable, right? Almost diplomatic. Except Booker wasn't done. Because for him, and this is the part that got buried under all the procedural noise, this moment wasn't only about Epstein anymore. Booker revealed something that had been building for months. His home state of New Jersey had been promised federal funding. Funding that had already been approved. And then quietly, it was frozen. Clawed back. Gone. And according to Booker, he had raised this issue repeatedly. Through proper channels, through staff, through every avenue available to him. And he had gotten nothing back. No answers. No resolution. No justice for New Jersey. Here's where it gets interesting. Grassley, to his credit, responded almost immediately. He told Booker directly, "If you need me to make a call to the White House on your New Jersey funding issue, I will do that. Let's handle it through proper channels. Work with me." But Booker held firm. He said, "Until I get actual satisfaction on this, I am not withdrawing my amendment." Full stop. And so the standoff remained. No compromise. No resolution. The chairman finally called the vote. And even that moment had its own chaos. Because as the clerk prepared to call the roll, one senator looked up and asked the question that perfectly summed up everything that had just happened inside that room. What are we voting on? The amendments had become so tangled, so layered on top of each other, that even the people sitting inside that committee weren't entirely sure what was actually on the table anymore. The clerk called the names anyway. Senators answered one by one. The vote moved forward. But the Epstein transparency question? Still unanswered. Still unanswered. Still sitting in that room like a shadow that nobody wanted to step into directly? My analysis. What happens next? And what should happen? Let's be straight about what this moment actually revealed. This wasn't just a procedural disagreement between two senators who see legislation differently. This was a window into something much larger. The Epstein case has been circling American politics for years, and every single time it gets close to real accountability, something happens. A procedural block, a jurisdictional argument, a pivot to a different topic, a debate about who should decide what the public gets to see. And that pattern, that consistent, almost clockwork pattern of redirection, is itself a story worth telling. Attorney General Pam Bondi has reportedly acknowledged that massive evidence exists. Republican senators have publicly demanded transparency. Democratic senators have publicly demanded transparency. The American public across party lines wants answers. And yet here we are, watching two senators argue over two lines buried inside an amendment, inside a vote about opioids, inside a committee that wasn't even convened to discuss Epstein in the first place. What should happen? Simple. A standalone vote. Clean. No attachments, no amendments writing on the back of opioid bills or immigration policy. Just a direct, transparent, on-the-record vote. Do you support releasing the Epstein files to the public? Yes or no? Put every senator on record. Let the American people see exactly where their elected officials stand. Because right now, the fog is the point. As long as this debate stays tangled inside procedural language and bipartisan bill negotiations, nobody has to give a straight answer. And the victims, the real people at the center of this entire case, continue to wait. Here's the bottom line. Jeffrey Epstein may be gone, but the questions he left behind are very much alive, and the people who may have shielded him, enabled him, or simply looked the other way, they are still out there, still powerful, still apparently worth protecting. The fight for these files isn't over. If anything, what happened in that Senate hearing room proved that the pressure is building. not fading, and the louder that pressure gets, the harder it becomes to keep hiding behind procedure. Do you think the American people will ever get the full truth about the Epstein files? Or will this keep getting buried under legislation and procedural moves until it quietly disappears? Let me know in the comments, because this conversation is far from over,